and welcome to California Free Radio. I'm Mike Netter, and no, I have not given up in LA, and I'll get to this background in just 1 second. As we are every week, and I keep repeating because I hope you get it out there, I'm accompanied by Scott Piotr at TaxFighter7 and Kurt English, whose social media presence, well, he really doesn't have one and doesn't want you to know about it. But as we tell you all the time, our show is live on my X feed at Netter Mike, live on LinkedIn under my real name, Mike Netter, where if you have a job and you're probably not a Democrat listening to this, we want you to tune on in. And it's on our Facebook groups under Mike Netter and Rebuild California as we share it across the ecosphere. Do help us spread the word. And if that isn't enough for you, and what we say ticks you off, go on Outraged, our YouTube channel. Gentlemen, we have an incredibly special guest tonight here with me in the closet. I'm doing this on-site live from a Christina Irwin fundraiser in the fabulous office of Angela Marston at the Pineapple Hill Saloon. And for everyone out there, and I'd love to pass you a bottle for somebody chiming in there. Remember, we do see your comments, and if I like them, I'll put them out there. Pineapple Hill Saloon, Angela Marston is the one that did the video a few years ago. I did a radio show with her called SOS Los Angeles, but you might explain the liquor. This is the backstock, and I'm going to go on tonight, do an opening spiel, and bring in our special guest where we're jammed into Angela's office. I want to start with
office. You mean her liquor storage room?
Well, her liquor storage room.
Are you doing quality control? I noticed some of the bottles are not full.
Well, not till after the show, Scott.
Let me put it to you this way. After I get through this bottle, the quality won't matter. Well, that's the Well vodka, by the way. So if you ever go and ask for Well vodka, this is what you get at Pineapple Hill.
What brand is that?
Smirnoff. You're asking someone who doesn't drink.
Got to have at least Sky or Kettle One there, Mike.
I'm sure it's up there on the top shelf, which you put it out of my reach.
and you're short, so that's easy to do.
Exactly, for damn good reason. You know what, guys? It's been an interesting week, hasn't it? And we reported some of this in Netter News here today, but I want to start with, we had a kind of a big victory this week in the fact that Donald Trump called Gavin Newsom, and Gavin said, Gavin, whether you like it or not, he didn't say it exactly like that. If you don't quit letting people that have, shall we say, not female genitals at birth play in CIF sports, guess what? We're yanking all the federal funding. So the CIF, the California Interscholastic Federation, came up with a not so brilliant plan to get around it, a victory for us. And what our guest tonight that we're going to have, and I'll get to that in a second, is going to tell you that's one small step in a large step for womankind, childrenkind, and kids all over that we have to do to make our educational system better. And you might say, if you see something like this show throughout Los Angeles, that when you see an emergency, and we see them all the time, you're going to call 911. I got news for you. It may not work out well for you. Kurt, you sent me the tweet this week that I did a little deep state research on, that the 911 response time in Los Angeles, this is not hyperbole, takes up to 20 minutes. Now, being the age I am, many of my surgeries have taken less time than it takes LA to answer the phone. And Kurt and Scott, you know what LA did about it this week?
Oh, wait a second. What did they do?
They cut the funding for emergency services because it makes perfect sense. All right. So they cut the funding for emergency services in the budget. We already spend less per head. I'll use these props than a well drink costs at the Pineapple Hill of any major city. So as you noticed, when Los Angeles caught fire, the fire department not only ran out of water, they ran out of, well, they probably could have used vodka at this point. They ran
out of water in the hydrants.
Right. And they ran out of a lot of things, and the LA is going to allow them to run out of money.
So just to clarify, it's 20 minutes just to answer the freaking phone, not to get you
help. Don't you answer 911.
That's
911 calls, emergency calls.
911. So if you get in the car and want to pay $8 for gas, you might as well drive to the hospital.
And let's say it takes 11 minutes to respond. Oh, wait, they cut all the emergency services. It takes 20 minutes to actually get to your house. After 20 minutes of waiting on hold, you may as well be dead, buddy.
And that's what's going to happen. And you know the reason this happens a lot? And we know this. And for everybody out there, I'm going to do the opening blast, bring on our guest, and dive into this liquor behind me. No, I've got a fundraiser out there I'm going to. Though I may not come out. I may just dive into liquor. I'll get back to you on that next week. But a quick reminder for everybody out there, we've got Josh Hoover as a guest next week, the assembly person who's also jumped into the podcast business. So Scott and Kurt, remember to tell that to people at the end. One of the reasons Los Angeles and California continues to make bad choices is because most of the population, I've said this a million times, doesn't know what's going on. And one of the reasons the population doesn't know what's going on is they're actually suppressing the next generation. And this is exactly what California politicians want to do. They want to suppress the current generation and the next generation by not teaching them civics, not teaching them math and science, trying to bring things into our schools that have nothing to do with basic skills. The only way we're going to break the back of that is probably breaking the back of the teachers' unions and by giving everybody out there income, equality, and no matter what, the choices that, well, frankly, Gavin Newsom has. And what do I mean by that? Gavin Newsom has 4 kids with Jennifer that he knows of, that we know of. Let me be specific. And those 4 kids, okay, all go to private school. Isn't that interesting? And we had Sonia Shaw on last week, who's running for superintendent of schools. And we have bad people running our schools who aren't educating our kids. Now, we're going to do something different tonight because I am in this little room with a bunch of alcohol. And I'm going to change chairs to introduce our guest. Our guest, Kevin McNamee, I'm going to let him introduce himself, but he's the former mayor of Thousand Oaks. No, he didn't get the last election. He didn't get indicted. And he also is the main proponent for a new initiative is coming called the CEO Act, which doesn't mean it's going to put Kevin in charge. It stands for the Children's Educational Opportunity. And if we want to make a change to the fabric of California, not only now, but for the future, so I don't have to, quote, and it's all about me, guys, stay in the closet and drink, or for many of you considering move out of California, we have to make a change in the way that education is run. Right, gentlemen?
Absolutely. Or the next generation.
We have to start over.
Generation will be lost.
And the way to start over is basically to stop what's going on in public education. So without further ado, because I got pizza to eat, hors d'oeuvres, and things to schmooze, I want to introduce our guest as we do a chair. That's Kevin McNamee. Now, watch this magical switch. Pay no attention to what goes on behind the curtain.
Yes, it's very smooth production you got there. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Good to meet you, gentlemen. How are you? Mike, thank you very much for that kind introduction. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I have a number of hats that I wear. I am, as Mike says, I'm former mayor of the city of Thousand Oaks, former council member there. Had a great time getting some, 43 projects through in the last 4 years that affect public safety, quality of life, as well as education. I'm a community college instructor in the state of California. Teach water sciences, where we train the women and men to go into the water treatment industry. I'm in clinical practice as a chiropractor and acupuncturist, physiotherapy, volunteer once a month at the local free clinic. So I get to help out the low-income families that are in Thousand Oaks, heading up this initiative, which is the big thing. And I'm looking forward to this going through so it has a brighter future for our students in California. So that way they can find their purpose in life and have the skills to survive and thrive. So that's where my main emphasis is right now, is that initiative, Children's Educational Opportunity Act.
Okay, so it's a great name. We're going to give children opportunity. Explain what that means.
Well, if you look at 50 years ago, the state of California was tops in the country in education. Other states looked at California to take their lead on how to do public education. Well, let's fast forward 50 years to where we are today. State standardized testing shows California is at the bottom or close to the bottom right now. Last year, state standardized testing shows our California 11th graders, 44% can't read or can't read proficiently. 72% of our 11th graders can't do basic math. And that's a far drop from where we were 50 years ago. So the question
we're
is,
talking like basic multiply, subtract, divide, and
correct.
add.
When you have students graduating who can't add, subtract, multiply, divide, can't read very well, if at all, the best they're going to do is a minimum wage job that is dead end, and they have nowhere else to go because they don't have the skills to take a higher paying job. Does that make sense?
It
That's
certainly
what's going
shows
on.
the failure of our system.
Exactly. Well, what this initiative will do is amend the California Constitution to allow the public school money to go to faith-based school, private school, and homeschool. And it's if the parent's not happy with their local public school and it's not working for them, the parent now has the financial means to move that child to private school, faith-based school, or homeschool by taking, instead of the $23,000 that goes into the public school, $17,000 gets put into the education savings account at the state level. Parents' job is to find the best education fit for that child, enroll that child in that school. That school notifies the state ESA trust board, says, I've got this child. This is what we charge in tuition at our school. The ESA trust board releases those funds directly to the school. The parents never touch the money. They never handle the money. So that way we're assured that education money is going to education and not family enrichment. So let's say they don't use all that money that year.
Right.
It rolls over year after year after year, earning interest. Unlike vouchers, which have been proposed in the past and were defeated, because of vouchers, if you don't use the money, you lose it. The ESA, Education Savings Account, allows us to roll the money over. So after 12th grade, they can use it for trade tech, community college, university for the rest of the kid's life. What are your thoughts?
That's a good idea, because then rather than just shop around and where the voucher goes, the parents will be very choosy as far as where they spend the money, how much they spend the money. So,
and if you're not happy with that school the kid's going to, let's say it's a private school, and they found another one that does a better job, they can move the child. Question I always ask, why is it that the students of wealthy families have all the education options, but the low-income, moderate-income students have one option, the local public school? And if that public school is failing, which a standardized test shows, why should they be locked into that and not have the same options as the students from wealthy families?
yeah, the people that are going to be impacted most by this are not going to be the people in the wealthy areas of the state. They're going to be those that are in the disadvantaged parts of the state.
Scott, let me also share.
Well, it'll actually impact everybody, Scott.
Exactly.
Because even a upper middle class parent, if you say, hey, you can go to a private school and we're going to subsidize it to the tune of $17,000, there are plenty of private schools in California charging in the 20s. But that might make the difference with some families. Say, sure, I'll pay the extra $5,000 to send them to the parochial school or the Christian school or this private school that has better academic outcomes.
Oh no, absolutely. You look at the people, middle class families too. I mean, they, especially if they have multiple children, it's a huge additional expense for them to get involved. They're more likely to spend the money to move into a neighborhood that has so-called good schools, which, by the way, no school in California is good because of the crap they're teaching. Okay, I disagree with all that crap, and so I don't want them teaching it, and I hope they're very ineffective at teaching it so that the kids don't get ruined. And that being said, you've got a situation now where the money will follow the kid, so now schools, including the public schools, I would presume, would compete for the business, right? They would try to improve their schools so that you choose their school rather than just yank them out of the public school no matter what. So
I've spoken to people via various conversations. Well, my school district is wonderful. I'm in a very expensive school district, and we do great. And I pull out my smartphone, I call up the CAPS test, which is the standardized test for the public schools in California. Yeah. And I'll say, you've got 37% that can't read proficiently of 11th graders and 45% that can't do math. In my book, that's not acceptable.
Hey, that's not my kid.
They think they're school district
My
to
kid
school.
knows how to read. My kid can add and subtract. You're talking about some kid whose parents don't care. What? It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me.
I agree.
Well, no, but think about this: the numbers you just quoted. If 45% can't do math, was that the number? That means 55% can. On any test I ever took, a 55% is an F.
Yeah.
And similarly, a 65% is a D. And I think you can give public schools in California an F
Okay.
pretty universally,
So,
even in the wealthy.
in the past, there's always been gripes. Whenever vouchers or anything has been proposed, they object to having this state public money go to parochial schools, to schools of faith. What's going to happen in this one?
Well, this initiative has already written protective language number 1, that if you're a school of faith, you keep teaching faith. You do not have to stop teaching faith because you're taking government money. That's already written in there as protective language. In fact, you can use some of this money.
So you don't have to put a sheet over the
To
cross in the
purchase-
back of the room.
You can use this money to purchase faith-based material and curriculums. That is so critical. The second thing that happens, which is really important, is that let's say the Sacramento legislature or the school board requires the public school students to be taught something that's really objectionable to the private school, faith-based school, or homeschool environment. We have protective language in there that says if any parent or school finds anything that's mandated by the state of California that they have to teach in the public school, they don't have to teach it if the parent or school objects to it. Isn't that great?
That's great. Okay, here's the next follow-up
Kevin,
question.
I've got another question, actually. You know that in the legislature, there's a bill, AB 84, that's been proposed that would limit school choice. What would be the interaction of that bill with this initiative if the bill passes and the initiative
Kurt,
passes? Does the initiative
This is a great
preempt
question.
the bill?
Great question, Kurt. I get it frequently. We have 2 ways of making laws in California. One is the legislative bill, which you go through the Assembly, Senate, and signed by the governor. That's the law. That can change from year to year depending on which way the political winds are blowing. That's one way. Second way is the initiative. In 1911, this came into effect that allows the people with a certain number of voter signatures gets it on the ballot and results in, hold on, I got the boss who wants to say
Time
something.
for a quick commercial for everyone out there where Kevin is describing. Why most of you know me, too bad for you. If you don't like it, don't call 911. By the time they show up, the show will be over. This is what the recall of Gavin Newsom was all about. It is called direct democracy, and we have the ability through direct democracy to change the future of education for our kids. Back to
Okay.
you, Kevin.
So,
Thank you.
okay, I understand. You do it by initiative.
And
then
then
it has
just to
change by initiative.
Scott, let me finish explaining initiative because a lot of the public, it's not had civics class. The initiative, if you get signatures, it goes onto the ballot. People pass it. It now becomes the people's law. It becomes a law just like the legislators. Best part is the only way to change an initiative is through another initiative. Does that make sense?
Yes, only the voters can change it.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, you're saying that the initiative, if passed, would preempt anything in AB 84 that would limit school choice.
Exactly. And isn't that brilliant? Because now the legislature can't, quote, legislate around it, create laws that impact initiative. No, what's in the initiative? If you want to change it, you've got to run another initiative, which is difficult to do.
Okay, so follow-up question. We're talking about curriculum, and basically what I'm hearing is that the private schools don't have to change their curriculum one iota.
Correct.
They can do what they want to do. Parents can choose, and this division of the state that's going to be writing a check has no ability to say, "Oh, we're not writing a check because fill in the blank," right? So, a couple of questions come up on that. One is, are these private schools that accept these vouchers or checks, are they going to be forced to give the state assessment standardized test?
There's 3 ways in which you become an eligible school to participate. One is that you're an accredited school by a regional, national, or faith-based accreditation body. And starting in 4th grade, no later than 4th grade, every other year you give a standardized test. There's some 20, 30 of them out there, like the Iowa Test of Basic Skills.
So it's
Stanford Nine.
a standardized test. It's
A
not
standardized
the
test.
California
Take your pick.
standardized test.
Any test that you want.
If I want to force you into teaching certain things, all I have to do is write the test to those things. And if you're forced to succeed on that test, you're going to teach them. or else you
Well,
won't succeed.
it doesn't matter. You just have to give the test. There's no minimum score required, whatever. The school reports, and actually the agency reports those results to the ESA Trust Board, who posts it on the website so people can see how well your school is doing. That's one way. Second way is starting no later than fourth grade, you have to give these standardized tests that are, just give one of the many that are out there. Take your pick school. Now you're an eligible school. You can participate. Third way is for those students that have children, for example, that can't take standardized tests because they're high functioning autism or they got ADHD or whatever the case may be. They can bring in a competency based expert who will tailor an exam around that student's ability. Does that make sense? So
That makes
those are
sense.
the three ways.
Okay, so we talked about public school versus homes or versus private school. Charter schools, I presume, would be like public schools. They compete for your dollars like anybody else. What about homeschools?
Homeschools are eligible. We cover the three areas of homeschool that we have in California: the private school affidavits, PSAs, the PSP, which is private school satellite program. Those families must align with and work with a charter school, faith-based school, or private school to help run their education. Third one is credentialed teacher model, where let's say the parent hires credentialed teachers to come in, or their parent is a credentialed teacher. They also align with and work with a charter school, private school, or faith-based school to help guide them through the education process. All three are covered. In fact, the homeschool families, those students can do the best and have possibly after 12th grade over $200,000 for college. And I forgot to mention, after 18 years of age, that student can transfer some or all of their ESA money that's unspent to another family member's ESA. Let's say the older brother is a plumber, has $50,000 left in the education savings account, never going to go take another class again. The younger sister is going to medical school for $200,000. The brother can transfer some or all of that money over to the sister. This is the low income and moderate income families 529 education savings account that the wealthy enjoy. Now the low income, moderate income families have the same ability as the wealthy families. This is equality and equity. Equality because everyone gets the same amount of money each year to select the best school. Equity because they all can wind up with a great education by 12th grade.
And so, in
Well, I think you made an important point there that it applies to trade school, it applies to college, to medical school. It's
technical
transferable
schools,
because this is taxpayer money. And I think we can all agree that all the way back to the Northwest Ordinance, the founding fathers recognized the value of universal education. The problem is it's been politicized. Then one of the other benefits of this approach is by creating competition, you're going to take away power from the teachers' unions who intervene politically in California and arguably run the.
oh, this
Well, I
is
need
this is
everybody's
the only
help.
way to do that.
Hold on.
Hold on.
So, excuse me, everybody. It's time for a quick commercial break. I could see a lot of you watching on social media. But for everyone out there, we want you to go to the website that Dan is going to scroll. $17,000 per year, right?
Yes.
Per student. So if you have 5 kids, you can send them all to school. $17,000 per year. Look at the website. Go to the CEO Act on the X feed, on LinkedIn, anywhere that you can, and start signing up to participate when this petition comes out, which is going to be approximately September. Now, back to our regular programming.
That was
Good
that was the next question. We're doing the initiative. Is it done? Is it ready to sign?
It's right now it's ready to sign, except I want to time it so that way we hit when students are back in school again. And we're waiting for the Secretary of State to finish their final review. They've seen it twice before, no problem there.
So
But
the Attorney General has written the title and summary already.
Not yet. First you do the Secretary of State, then when you're ready to go, you send it over for Attorney General for title and summary of the initiative.
So do you
That
have,
will
do you have
time it.
money?
And they'll sabotage it to make it
They
unattractive.
actually did a reasonable job last time we put it for them. The only objection I had was they called it a voucher, not an education savings account, because vouchers, again, you don't use it, you lose it. So I'm going to argue with them again if they would use the correct terminology. But I need people to go to our website, go to the homepage. We've got a form there. that we'd like them to put in their name, email, and phone number. So that way, when we launch Signature Gathering, we can email them the initiative, print it out, sign it, mail it back to us. The more people we have, the better off. Go to educationopportunity.org, educationopportunity.org. Could you do the banner at the bottom so it can scroll by, people can see it? And then if you want a free 3-minute text link video sent to your smartphone that you can not only view, but also copy and send on to friends and family, go to 323-417-4644. And I'd like for everyone to sign up their friends, their family, their enemies. Just sign them up. Don't even tell them about it. Then copy that link to that video, send it to them and say, I have signed you up for this. We want to do this to change education in California and give it a bright future.
All right,
Okay.
Kevin, thank you very much. I'm going to jump in. Go here.
Hold on. I have one more question for him.
Yes, sir.
Why am I so good looking?
Supply and demand, right?
No, we don't have that question, Mike.
All of a sudden, you're going to have this huge demand for private schools. Private schools are probably not all full right now, but it wouldn't take much to fill them up. And I'm sure new schools will sprout up because the demand will be so high. If all of a sudden $17,000 of government money can come into that school system, that private school system that's out there now, won't that drive up the cost of the private school tuition? I mean,
Great question.
my wife teaches at a private school, and her teacher salary is significantly less than a public teacher's salary. And that's because it's, she's got smaller classes. They're doing it on a shoestring budget, a lot of these schools. So all of a sudden, free money.
Scott, great question. Here's what's going to keep it from not going up like vouchers would have done, is that schools can open up immediately by offering those standardized tests starting in 4th grade. January 2nd, 2027, you will have schools starting out of people's homes with a minimum of 6 kids. You've got a lot of public school teachers on the sidelines who are fed up with being told what to teach and how to teach. They can open up their own schools. There's been a lot of schools that have been closed for faith-based and private schools that will increase seat capacity by opening because the funds are now available. So to your point, Scott, it's supply and demand, yes, but we're going to increase the number of schools. So Scott, you opened a school and charged $17,000. Kurt opened one for $10,000. Both of you give excellent education. People aren't going to sign up with you, Scott, because they're getting the same education at Kurt's school. So you're going to say, well, I've got to lower my price. So they're going to search for the best education at the lowest price. Does that make sense?
Well, I like that you're telling me that anybody that's a credentialed teacher can open up a school of 6 or more, or 6 and under. What is it?
6 or more. It's got to take minimum of 6 in the state of California.
Six or more, and you would have an instant. Oh, I'm sure cities will love it with schools popping up in residences all over the city.
Kurt, Scott, we had the highest literacy rate. We had the highest literacy rate in the United States in the 1800s when we had one-room schoolhouse, ages 4 to 14, being taught by one teacher. We're going back to that model.
And by the way,
they don't have to be credentialed teachers, because honestly, credentialed teaching, you talk to the teachers who are credentialed teachers, it means absolutely nothing. It just means you took some classes and passed them. It doesn't say you're a good teacher. What's that?
They've been indoctrinated and poisoned in a lot of ways because they went to the educational schools.
No, I've got the boss tapping me on the shoulder. He wants to have a seat here, so I'm going to relinquish the chair. But if anyone needs to reach me, you can do through educationopportunity.org. Thank you for doing that. Scroll at the bottom, 323-417-4644. Thank you, gentlemen, for the opportunity. Let's get this done. Let's help those kids in the future, because education should be in the control of the parent, not a policy maker, not a politician, and not a bureaucrat. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hey, Kevin, thanks.
And Kevin, I went to the website as soon as you gave it. It filled it in the search engine, and I signed up. It's very easy. So I would encourage everyone to go to educationopportunity.org.
Thank you, Kurt.
And for everybody out there, hold on. Let me.
Thanks for putting it in all the time. I know what it takes to put an initiative together and run it, especially statewide.
Right.
So,
and for everyone out there, in case you're not grabbing all this real quick, speaking of which, I found a bottle dated 1856 when they knew how to do education and apparently knew how to make whiskey. So let's roll with that. For everyone out there.
Sure, whatever you say. Hey, are you mixing up the stock there? You're going to screw everything up.
Yeah, probably I will.
He's putting the stuff from the high shelf down where the cheap stuff.
Netter News and my X feed and the pregame pub all have links to the CEO Act website. Where's my prop? Your shirt. Okay. Right now, again, the public needs to get this done. As you can see, our politicians can't even have to figure out how to do 911, and it's 3 numbers. So we can't depend on the politicians of California to educate our kids for the next generation. This has to get passed. It is passed in other states. President Trump, in my presence, has literally said he is for the version of this act. For everyone out there, we'll be back. I'll be back next week with Josh Hoover. In the meantime, tonight, I would like to say I'm leaving you in 2 able hands, but hey, all I've got is Scott and Kurt. So with that note,
just
go ahead.
real quick. California Policy Center did a survey of this initiative. 72% of the voters want it, and it goes across party line and racial lines.
Wow, what a great point. Like Prop 36, how many?
72%.
72%, which is exactly why Sacramento will fight it. Kevin, stick your head in here real quick in front of the camera.
Well,
Hey,
and
thank you very
Mike,
much
if
for
you
having
look
me.
at our feed of messages, of 45 times 47 posted that reference to Prop 36, and it may get similar support.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%. Everyone
Yeah.
out there, thank you for the messages that are out there. God bless you. I'm going to go off and go back to this fundraiser. These 2 gentlemen will answer all your texts and questions and keep you updated on the stories that have taken place this last week. But the big story, which is going to take place over the next few months, is indeed the Children's Educational Opportunity, known as CEO. Go to my feed, Scott feed. Don't go to Kurt's because he doesn't have one. LinkedIn, Facebook, anywhere you can. Look at Netter News, and it will be in this week, and there will be a reference to it last week. It came out today. Everyone out there, God bless, thank you, and good night from me, but keep going with these 2.
Goodbye, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Go raise lots of money.
Hey, one of the things I was thinking, Kurt, is there's so many reasons not to send your kid to public school. And I was thinking it would be kind of fun just to go over the news just from this week on those reasons.
Well, Scott, let's talk about why you don't want your kid to go to public school. That's a great segue into some of the awful things that are going on in California schools. Now, I want to remind our audience.
I was saying, start us off with the San Francisco situation.
Well, hold on. I went to Los Angeles City Unified School District schools. So for those of you in Los Angeles, I went to Rinaldi Elementary, Tulsa Elementary, Portola Junior High School in Tarzana, Taft High School in Woodland Hills. So that was when, as our guest Kevin said, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, you had all these teachers that were taught the right way. And still in the late 20th century, you could get a good education in Los Angeles. But when those teachers retired, they replaced them with DEI hires, and Los Angeles City schools are a disaster. But as you say, Scott, look at what's been happening here and just some of the more outrageous ones. In Mar Vista High School, the geography class is assigning LGBTQ plus ABC, XYZ, whatever all that nonsense is, vocabulary with photo illustrations. This has nothing to do with geography. It's just radical left-wing cultural Marxist indoctrination.
So wait a minute. So basically, it's an excuse to use porn to teach us an LGBTQ.
Yeah, to sexualize children by adult perverts in public school.
But why do we even need to teach them LGBTQ anything? By the way, state law says
we don't need to indoctrinate them in anything.
State law says that
we don't need
as a parent, when they teach about LGBTQ, that's not sex ed. That's teaching equal opportunity and non-discrimination. And you are not...
And rationality says...
You're not allowed to opt your kid out. They won't tell you that teaching is going on. You won't even know to opt out. And when you go to try to opt out, they will not allow it. Your kid will be in that class.
Well, here's my solution to that. If you're a parent and that's going on in your schools, tell your kid to disrupt whatever's going on, to cause as much trouble as possible, and dare them to expel you so you can sue them. And if your kid is being
Are
subjected to
you
that,
providing free legal
where I would
services?
go, hold on, Scott. I would go to Pacific Justice Institute's website,
Ah,
pji.org, where you can get free legal representation. And what I would encourage every parent to do is cause as much trouble as possible. This will stop when normal people who want to protect their kids from being sexualized by adult child molesters stand up and say, we won't tolerate this. Teach your kids not to tolerate it. And we will overwhelm them, because normal people outnumber these perverts 50, 100, 200, 1,000 to 1.
So as soon as they start teaching LGBTQ sex, you're allowed to opt out if you know about it. Depends on the district as to whether they tell you. But if they're just teaching about LGBTQ, then you're not allowed to opt out. That goes into our next item with Sage Creek High School in Carlsbad, where they had a scheduled guy, gal, I don't know, a BDSM. Tell me what BDSM is. I'm not in the circle.
Now, I learned what this was when they first had dating sites on the internet in the 90s, and
So
I tried to sign up for one.
you're much more experienced.
And the problem was the search engines weren't very good. And so instead of a dating site, what you got is you spank me, I spank you, and you got people with whips. I'm like, what is this? I didn't even know what it was. And then that's what they call it. BDSM stands for bondage, dominations, and sadomasochism.
So they had some BDSM expert named Mita Beach, whatever the heck that acronym or false.
It's somebody's stage name for their perversion and their porn.
But you can go on X and go at x.com and then /Mita Beach, MITA Beach, and you can see all of the lovely things that he's involved in. And they had scheduled him to come speak at this school, and they weren't telling parents about it, but they found out. What happened?
And what did the parents do? Just what I suggested. They caused a whole bunch of trouble and they canceled it.
They raised a ruckus to the point where
Trouble.
they canceled the event. But you have to realize that they really didn't cancel the event permanently. They're just going to wait until the furor dries down, goes down, and then they're going to reschedule it and hopefully try to get away with not having to deal with those angry parents. Those parents can be such a pain in the neck when we're trying to adopt.
And for the parents that are concerned that if I tell my kid to cause trouble when they're trying to sexualize my kid, that might affect his opportunities in the future. Oh no.
Well, you have to realize.
Look at Charlie Kirk.
Not every.
No. Just let me talk, Scott. Look at Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Look at all the troublemakers in school that are now very wealthy from promoting the political point of view that got them a little bit of fame because they stood up and caused trouble.
So, but you have to realize not all kids are going to be Charlie Kirk or like your kid and have the backbone to stand up. There's going to be a lot of timid people that are not used to confrontation, and they're just going to sit through the thing rather than complain and be confrontive. So you need,
all right, Scott, let's
at least one guy in the class to do it.
Let's address that. Yeah, it only takes one guy, but let's address that. So you're a parent. Are you going to teach your kid to be a coward? Or are you going to teach your kid to be brave?
Well, hopefully you're going to teach.
How are you going to teach your kid?
Stand up for what's right and wrong, no matter what the cost.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise all you are is a follower. If you don't stand up for what's right, I mean, look at the world we live in today. It's more important than ever to teach kids to stand up for themselves, to stand up for what's right and wrong. And we're talking about sexualizing children. This isn't controversial, or shouldn't be, to stop the sexualization of children. It is child molesting. It is illegal.
I agree. And look at it. It's a teaching opportunity between you and your child. And when this stuff comes up, teach them to stand up for what's right and go through the proper channels. But if the proper channels don't work, raise a ruckus, get arrested, make $1 million in your career.
No, you won't get arrested. They might expel your kid. That's okay. Why do you want your kid in a school where they're sexualizing them anyway?
Right. And there'd
be bigger problems than that. If that was my kid, the expulsion would be the least of their problems.
And it's and
They would be my litigation. You talk about BDSM, they'd be my litigation servant if that happened. And I'd teach them
we don't want to go there.
Event of deposition. It's called a deposition, and they would rather be whipped than be deposed by me.
Okay,
Because it would be ugly and it would be harsh, and they would hate it.
that's a good segue into AB 84, where the legislature is trying to take choice away from parents. Explain what that bill does. You mentioned it in our questioning of Kevin. What is AB 84?
Well, it's just designed to throw up a bunch of administrative roadblocks to prevent school choice. It's designed to make it harder to do. That's all.
So
just the typical liberal stuff.
So the unions came up with a bill, and it's being proposed. It has not been approved by either the Assembly or the Senate or the governor. So it's not law yet. But basically, the unions came up with this idea to try and make it harder and put hurdles in front of private schools and homeschoolers. Okay. Now, this part has been in the news a lot. And we're talking about boys and girls sports.
Well, hold on. Before we leave education,
No, this is
let's
education.
talk about one more
This is
thing.
education.
Well, hold on. But before we get to that's a whole nother pod of things, boys and girls sports. There's one more not other education issue that we should talk about that we'll discuss to everyone
Oh,
later.
you're talking about San
So they have a new proposal in San Francisco to do something called equity for grading equity.
Hey, if I was
So we
if
don't-
I was a D student, I'd want some equity. Give me some A's. Give me some A's. I want some A's.
Okay, so let's talk philosophically here for a moment. In Marxism, they have a concept called equality of outcome. In the Anglo-American legal system, which our legal system is based upon, we have equality of opportunity. That means everybody competes and there's winners and losers. But in San Francisco, what they're proposing is an equity, a grading equity, so that we're going to have race-based grading. So whites and Asians get penalized for their race, and blacks and Hispanics get a different deal. Clearly illegal, clearly stupid. This is the same district, Scott, isn't it, that was banning different AP courses for equity.
Right, because
So you drag down the people at the top
accelerated courses are by nature.
so you don't make people feel bad.
Yeah, I wasn't in any
And so even the radical left Ro Khanna, the congressman from the Silicon Valley,
yeah.
said, hey, wait a minute. I took AP courses. This is stupid. This is stupid. So all these things, Scott, we just talked about grading for equity, LGBTQ perversion in geography at Mar Vista, refusing to let parents opt out, making school choice harder. These are all reasons. Get your kids out of public school. You know that, Scott, homeschooling is more popular now than at any time in the last 100 years?
Fantastic. My son is homeschooling his kids, and I think it's great. They get to control the curriculum. They get to teach what they want to teach. And they're the ones that are responsible for their kids' education, and they're working their butts off to make sure they're educated well. Hey, just so that it's clear
Well,
for everybody, just so it's clear for everybody, in San Francisco, that proposal got so much heat that they dropped the proposal because even Newsom and the legislature called them up and said, what the heck are you doing? Not to mention all of the irate parents that showed up at that board meeting. So again, they're going to put it to the side, and they'll wait until the heat dies down. Then they'll just re-implement it without making a lot of to-do over it.
Calling it a different thing. Now, you raised the point about boys and girls sports, and wow, was there a lot of activity in that area this week. First of all, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, based in the federal government, is intervening in California, and Trump has criticized what's going on where they're letting boys compete in the girls' track meets. And I got to say something editorially. If you're a boy and you're competing in girls' sports, you are a coward. You are a sissy. I have zero respect for you. I will never hire you. Don't show up at any of my businesses asking for a job. I don't want you. and you are a deplorable human being, to quote Hillary Clinton, but you're really deplorable. And the parents of anyone that would have their kid pretend to be a girl when their kid's a mediocre athlete and try to pretend that they want a girl's sport is sickening. And I have zero respect for those parents, too.
So in the news this last week, of course, we have Riley Gaines, who's the swimmer in college that lost the medal to the boy pretending to be a girl and referred to as Leah Thomas. And she was planning to go into medicine and do all this other stuff. And she has just kind of found that there's such a demand and such a need. She has basically made her career in trying to promote women and women's sports and keeping the men out of women's sports. But this week we had a long jumper that won the long jump contest, except for some boy pretending to be a girl.
Well, I think the long jumper was from Crean Lutheran High School in Irvine, and the triple jumper was from La Cañada High School in Los Angeles County, just north of Pasadena, up the 210 freeway. But both of these girls did something heroic that we should recognize. Is after the medal ceremony where the boy won and they got the second place medal, afterwards they stood on the first place podium and had their picture taken because they were the real winner. And when this nonsense ends, Scott, is when the girl competitors and their parents stand up. And God bless the parents of one of those girls that got in the face of the parents of the boy pretending to be a girl and just dressed them down.
That was the girl, the long jumper. Her name is, let's see, Katie. I want to get this right here. Katie McGinnis of La Cañada. She was the high jumper in Arcadia, or in La Cañada that you were talking about. It was actually the hold on, I can get this right here. All these fun things that they're doing, and it's kind of like hard to keep up with. So literally that.
Yeah, but you know, the good news is President Trump is threatening to withhold federal funds through all of California over this, and the DOJ is investigating. I hope they start arresting the organizers of these things, because you think about it, you're committing consumer fraud. If you advertise that something is a girls' sporting event and you let boys compete, that's false advertising.
Oh, right.
And if you do it across state,
they're not going to.
The Federal Trade Commission has jurisdiction. A lot of people have jurisdiction.
I mean, even Newsom said it was unfair for boys to compete in girls' sports, but he's doing nothing about it. So the mom went after this mom of the boy pretending to be a girl, and she pulled no punches. She's out there saying, "You're a failure as a mother that you don't correct your son and have him compete like a man. What kind of a woman are you?" I mean,
well, and let's shame him by naming his name. It's A.B. Hernandez from the Inland Empire. A.B. Hernandez, you're a coward, and I have zero respect for
that. A.B. Hernandez is the boy pretending to be a girl, and
and I'd love to debate A.B. Hernandez's mother, just like and confront her just like the angry mom did, and tell her how lousy a parent she was, and just humiliate her, which she deserves publicly.
She does, and you know that this kid only did this because his parents encouraged it. You know, his parents probably were putting words in their mouth, so take that for what it's worth. But he didn't come up with the idea of his own. He came up with it because his parents said, "Oh, well, you've always kind of had this leaning. Are you sure you're not a girl? You can be a girl."
No, Scott. Any boy who pretends to be a girl is a loser.
Absolutely.
And needs mental health counseling.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate. They're definitely a loser because they're competing in the girls' sports, but they're confused. They need help. They don't need encouragement. They don't need help in their delusion. They have a dysphoria that needs to be fixed, and parents are doing a huge disservice by not trying to heal that boy. It's like giving somebody who's an alcoholic a drink and enabling them to continue to drink rather than addressing the alcoholism. this boy needs help and it needs to be addressed. And instead, they encourage it and enable it. It's disgusting. So, you heard what CIF did to try and get out from underneath the Trump lawsuit? Oh, and I'm sure AG Bonta has filed several lawsuits to try and keep Trump from cutting their funds and keep weirdos like AB Hernandez able to compete. So when a boy wins, let's use the Olympics as an example. I know that CIF sports, there's different brackets, number of people that go from one event to the other. If you're swimming, for instance, or in a track meet, they'll oftentimes take the top three, let's say. And so let's say a boy is one of those three. Now all of a sudden, a girl who would have otherwise been one of those three isn't able to go to the finals, to the next event, to see if she would be the one that would win the medal. They take the top three from each heat or whatever. And so that girl didn't even have the opportunity to compete because the boy took the spot. And so CIF came up with their so-called compromise. CIF is the sports federation in the state of California for high school sports. They basically said, oh, that girl that otherwise would have been there if the boy wasn't there, we're going to allow her to go to the next level, the next event, and compete there. I mean, and the only logic that I can come up with them allowing that to happen is that they're thinking that they're going to take that boy's medal away at some time, and they'll need to know who legitimately came in third, who got aced out of a medal because the boy got one of the medals. So, I mean, it's stupidity, and I know CIF is trying to follow state law. So really, the burden and the truth and the responsibility for perverting all of this lies on Newsom's desk and the legislature's desk. Your state assemblyman and your state senator that voted for this BS, and then Newsom signed it into law. Schools now have a choice. They can either follow state law, which means they have to allow boys into the locker rooms of girls, allow boys into the girls' bathrooms, allow boys into the girls' sports teams, or violate state law and comply with federal law to maintain their Title IX funds and comply with Trump's executive order. And so most schools are complying with state law and not Trump's executive order. And they think they're going to win. They think they're going to get their money too and still comply with the state law. And I hope that Trump is totally successful and the state of California gets no money from the feds for their stupidity and their perversion. I'm sorry. I went on a rant, Kurt.
Rants are good.
So that's the reason why you guys need to go to educationopportunity.org and sign up there so that when this initiative hits the streets in September, that you can get one, you can sign it, you can have all your friends sign it. We need to qualify this thing right away. We don't want to sit there and take all 6 months to qualify it. We need to qualify this thing in like 60 days. We need to show them that this is like Prop 36 when it comes to crime and letting criminals out in the streets. We want to stop this foolishness. We want to stop it now. We want this thing on the ballot now, and we want to vote so that we can take our kids and put them into a school that actually teaches. What a novel concept. So go to educationopportunity.org.
Yeah, the problem here is that parents used to be able to trust the public schools. My mother was a public school teacher in Los Angeles from 1950 to 1991 when she retired, 41 years. And she saw the decline of LA city schools in the 50s, 60s. Was good. In the 70s, you could see the warning signs. And in the 80s, you could see the DEI and the
they didn't call it that then.
Migration. Well, she had an administrative credential, and they said if you were not white, we could promote you to be a vice principal.
So that wasn't called.
So we can't
they just referred to that as affirmative action at the time, I think.
Yeah, it's still just racial discrimination, and she was so close to retirement that she didn't bother.
She didn't want to fight it.
In retrospect, she should have sued the district.
She should have known a good attorney.
Exactly. Well, the problem here is that the focus of the teachers union dominated public schools now is not what's best for the child. You remember the head of the California Teachers Association in the 1990s said, I'll start caring about kids when kids start paying union dues. So it's
Right.
all about their power.
It's all about
It's
the
not
teachers.
about what the kids learn, and it's about political indoctrination. So again, as I do on many of our broadcasts, I encourage every parent to take your children out of public school. Take them out of public school.
Yes, and we're not talking about, hey, it would be nice. We're talking about it's to save them from this stupidity and perversion.
Yes. Well, Scott, we talked about education. Let's talk about crime. With Mike, we talked about the wait for a 911 call, meaning an emergency call. But apparently, there's something called the Innocence Project in the San Francisco Bay Area. And somebody who got released, a convicted child killer, was rearrested for child sex crimes.
No, it was an illegal alien.
Liberals are to blame for this.
So they have an illegal alien. They arrest him for children's sex crime. They put him in jail. They let him out, which I can't believe they let him out. It's only because there's stupid sanctuary law, right? He should have been deported. As soon as he got out of jail, they should
deported. He should have been given the death penalty. What are you talking about?
Or at least he should have been made into a eunuch. Either way, he should not have been on the streets, and not on the streets of California. So what did he do after he got out?
He molested another child. He's rearrested for doing it again.
I mean, how many times have we heard child molesters getting out and molesting again? I mean,
now, Scott, at least they didn't have him teaching in the Mar Vista School District on LGBT Day.
And I'm supposed to be happy about that?
No, we want to kick them. We want to arrest all these people. But you talked about illegal aliens down in San Diego. It's too bad Mike's not here because he's a San Diego native. The illegal aliens have set up in the Gaslamp District, and many of you who visit San Diego remember the Gaslamp District when you'd actually want to go there. And it's near the baseball stadium that Mike loves. And they've set up there, and they're driving patrons away from the local bars and restaurants, and they may close. And some of these operations are cartel backed.
So what they've set up an open air drug market there, and the cops aren't doing anything about it?
Well, and just sell their normal crap, like in the streets of Los Angeles. You have all these illegal alien street vendors.
So the street vendors are competing against the bars who have to get licenses and everything else.
Yeah.
Meet health codes.
Well, I see it when I go to the USC football games. You have these vendors out there selling beer, which without a liquor license is illegal in California.
But they're not stopping it. So all these companies, all these businesses that comply with the rules and spend thousands and thousands of dollars getting the licenses and then complying and risk getting caught by doing something stupid like selling to an underage kid by mistake, they're going out of business because they can't compete with these guys who pay no rent, who pay no money for licenses, who are not under the jurisdiction of the health department, and the good guys are going out of business in exchange for these street fair guys. Well, that sounds like America. Go.
Yeah, at least the good news is that the Department of Justice has a project to get these illegal aliens, when they're released from state and county courts, and they're deporting them. And 347 of them have been charged with illegal reentry since January. So the Trump Department of Justice is starting to get these people out of our country.
So instead of the California law enforcement people holding them, notifying ICE, and having a good, clean transfer where they don't have guns or anything on them, and they're not endangering the neighbors, instead they're lying in wait outside courthouses and jails to catch them on their way out.
Oh, in some cases in the hallway outside the courtroom.
And that's where that one judge got in trouble because she heard about it and snuck the illegal alien criminal out the judge's exit. And then
She's facing a penalty of up to 6 years in jail, and I can't imagine she'll ever be a judge again.
Well,
and I want to remind you, Scott.
You guys are spending 1 day in jail.
Yeah, up to 6 years. But I want to remind you, my aunt was a judge in Superior Court in Los Angeles County, and first in municipal court when they had them in the 70s, then later in Superior Court, then in the appellate division of the Superior Court. And I met many of the judges that were there. Every one of them was incredibly focused on not even having the appearance of unethical behavior, not even the appearance. Like they would drop out of clubs because they wouldn't admit women and things like that. And so a normal judge is hyper careful about following the law. And so if you see a judge engaging in this level of corruption, they're basically a politician who's pretending to be a judge, not a real judge.
Which is what those federal judges are that are putting state or nationwide injunctions against Trump and his activities, unconstitutionally, I might add. Hey, I want to move on because I don't want to lose time and forget about this, but the state of California has got a budget deficit. It's going to be about $12 billion, which, by the way, is about the same number that the state of California spent on providing free health care for illegal aliens last year, implying
how
that
convenient, Scott.
If they just dropped doing that, they would balance the budget and they wouldn't have to affect anything else in the budget. But are they dropping that? No.
No.
Oh, heaven forbid. But tell us what the city of LA is doing. They have a $1 billion shortfall. They don't have that big of a budget. Not compared.
Well, and they're cutting fire. And let's remind our audience. I mean, if you live in Pacific Palisades or in Altadena, you don't need reminding of the utter failures of the city and county of Los Angeles to put fires out. For almost a year, they were rehabilitating a reservoir at the top of the hill in Pacific Palisades. And you had the fool that is the head of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, a DEI hire, who got double the salary almost of her
predecessor.
The guy in there before, making $750,000 a year, but they couldn't put water in the reservoir. And why that's important is because they put the reservoir at the top of the hill and let gravity bring the water to the fire hydrants in the hilly areas of Pacific Palisades. No water in the reservoir, no water in the fire hydrants.
One of my favorite pictures or backgrounds is a fire hydrant actually on fire, which is what happened in the Pacific Palisades, because there's no stinking water in it. So yes, it's embarrassing, but it has to stop there.
How hot the flames have to be for a metal fire hydrant to catch fire.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. I'm sure it's the rubber gasket in there that's catching fire, but it still had to get pretty.
Okay, fair enough.
So
to your point, Los Angeles is facing a $1 billion budget deficit, so they're going to lay people off. They're not going to increase fire protection. They're not going to do anything competently. And an anonymous source has indicated that Karen Bass is trying to punish senior people in the LA Fire Department rather than funding them appropriately so they can fight fires. It's all about the blame game.
So they're going to cut the LAPD a lot. LAPD is running with a lot less officers than their full complement, right? They can't hire enough people. And they basically said, okay, you're not going to hire that many people. We're going to cut that in half. So they're going to eliminate, I think the number was close to 1,000 officers that they're not going to bother hiring. And fire department, they're also cutting firefighting equipment. You know, I guess if half the city's burned down, there's not much left to protect. They don't need firemen for those areas anymore, right? Well,
so they need them because they need to rebuild. But the problem is that the liberals, Newsom, Karen Bass, they want to put low-income housing in the Pacific Palisades, and they want to prevent the homeowners from rebuilding.
So I'm working on some projects. I'm an architect. I work in construction. Uh, there are actually, and I've been doing projects on Pacific Palisades. All we wanted to do on our project was get a permit to remove the fire debris. This isn't rocket science. And yes, there was asbestos involved, but it was a minute amount, less than 1%. And it took us a month to get a permit. And then it took us less than a month to do the work and remove it. So it took longer to get the permit than it did to actually do the work. And we were one of the first ones that have removed the fire debris. Most properties there have not removed the fire debris. There have been very, very, very few permits, if any at all. I mean, ours was a debris removal. There have been basically no new building permits issued after the fire, and it's been 4 months already. So they're cutting the budget. I'm sure that what that means is that it's going to be even slower to rebuild because they're not going to have the appropriate personnel to review plans, and they already took too long. So the incompetency is multiplying, and I'm going to go out on a limb here. I know it's not a big projection, but I'm going to predict that the LA Olympics are going to be a fiasco. There's no Peter Uberoth. There's no Richard Riordan on the horizon. We have a bunch of inept Democrats that cannot tie their shoes, and they're supposed to set up and run the Olympics. I mean, the '84 Olympics, if you remember back then, actually made a profit, where most of the time before that, every city that entertained the Olympics, they spent millions and millions, if not billions of dollars that they never got back, building fancy venues and all this other stuff. LA just took and upgraded and did facelifts on their existing venues, and it was a fantastic Olympic.
But the problem was the kings and the princes involved in the Olympics said, we want a brand new facility. And Peter Uberoth told them to pound sand. He said, we have facilities, we're using them, or you can take your Olympics and shove it.
And like I said, the '84 Olympics in LA were some of the best Olympics ever. You know, what they did and how they did it, and the way that it was put together, the way that it was organized, it went like clockwork.
And the commies from Russia didn't show up, and we didn't care.
Well, that probably was helpful in making it run smoothly. I don't know, but
they were retaliating because Carter had boycotted the Moscow Olympics in 1980.
No, I understand that. So yeah, there's politics involved, but the reality of it is there's no Richard Riordan on the horizon. There's no Peter Uberoth on the horizon. You've got inept Democrats that can't even fight a fire and put water in a fire hydrant. The Olympics are going to be a fiasco. They're going to be
stupid Karen Bass wants to prevent you from driving to the Olympic venues, and they're spread out all over Los Angeles County. Are you kidding me?
Well, they were spread out in '84 too, and the traffic was fantastic because everybody took their vacations that year.
Yeah, a lot of companies made their employees take their 2-week vacation during those 2 weeks in 1984, and I remember that the roads were totally clear. It was awesome to drive in LA.
I know, it was awesome to drive around there and that stuff. But you know, if you want to have any chance of the LA Olympics succeeding, first of all, you cannot reelect Karen Bass. She's an inept DEI blob, and whoever gets in there is going to have the huevos to go in there and fire a bunch of bureaucrats like Trump is doing, clear out the dead wood, make it efficient, and they're going to have to find a Peter Uberoth type person to actually take charge and prepare for the Olympics, or they're not going to happen, or they're not going to happen well. I mean, if I were the International Olympic Committee, I'd be having a review of the LA Olympics and the venues and the progress that they've made, you know, this year, and I would be looking for an alternative venue starting tomorrow because they are lost. We have some of the best stadiums on the planet. We got a couple of brand new stadiums in West LA. You know, we have fantastic facilities. Even the Coliseum, which needs another facelift, is still in really pretty good shape. So, I mean,
what they're going to do with the Coliseum is they lowered the football field so the seats are closer. They're going to raise the field by putting dirt on it so that it's big enough in the bowl to have a track and field. And the track and field events are going to be in the Coliseum, as they were for the 1932 Olympics and the 1984 Olympics.
So, but who's going to take charge in doing that? You expect bureaucrats to figure out how much dirt they need to fill it up? I mean, I'm sorry. I don't trust them to even do that. And that's what engineers do for a living, civil engineers, figure out dirt. So,
Well, we'll certainly see what happens with the Olympics. But what we do know from history is anything Democrats control, they screw up. All blue cities, all Democrat-run cities are hellholes in America. Detroit, Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. They're failed cities.
We just read this week how BART, their rapid transit up in San Francisco, which has been subsidized heavily since its creation. People rave about what a great system it is, but it's losing more money, has fewer riders on it, and their staff and employees are the highest paid in the country.
But Scott, why are there fewer riders? Do you know why?
Well, I wouldn't ride on mass transit. COVID was one of those reasons.
No. There's fewer riders because they're letting crime go wild.
Yes, they are unsafe.
Secondly, they're homeless people.
Producer Dan has pointed out way too much crime.
Homeless people have taken over BART. Those two problems.
Hey, even in Orange County, the Orange County transit system, the bus system, we're not talking subways or trolleys or trains, the bus system, you get homeless people, they go on, they pay their $1.25 or whatever, and they ride it all day long because it's heated or air conditioned, and they get a nice place that's relatively safe so they don't get bugged by other homeless people or drug dealers or any of these kinds of things. And so you go on the average metro bus in Orange County, and it's got several homeless people riding it. And they've kind of
as you know, they were dumping them off in Fashion Island, and they were sleeping in the grassy area there.
The OCTA depot there. Yes, that's what happens. The mass transit systems have become a gathering point and haven and resource for the homeless, and nobody else wants to ride with that. I mean, they spread out, they smell. Granted, they may have problems. Granted, they may not be the cause of their problems. Most of them don't want help. And if you keep that up and you expect normal people that are going to a job and have to get there on time and they have to dress nice and not smell bad when they walk into the office, they're not going to ride that stuff. Forget it. We're spending millions and millions of dollars. BART is the worst example. And we're getting basically a hotel for the homeless on wheels. Hello.
Well, Scott, as we wrap up tonight, we want to mention about gun legislation. In California, they want to classify a gun barrel as a firearm and make you get a full background check to buy a gun barrel. What's with that?
I'm sorry. If you have a gun barrel, you cannot fire a bullet out of that. Not without the rest of the gun. So
but remember when Dianne Feinstein was alive, they tried to ban certain assault weapons, and they'd show her a picture of a gun. Ooh, that looks like a dangerous one. She was so knowledgeable.
There still is no definition of what an assault weapon is. It's just a gun that looks mean or looks bad.
All right, to our audience, thank you for joining us tonight. You can find out what's going on in California at Netter Mike on X. And Scott, tell us about your social media site.
Yeah, at TextFighter7 on X. You can look at it that way. You can see us
next week. We'll be back at 6:30 California time to talk about what's wrong with California and how we can fix it.
And we have Josh
Hoover for joining us tonight.
We have Josh Hoover as our guest next week, Assemblyman. And he'll tell you all about what's wrong in Sacramento. No, we can't do that. We only have an hour and 15 minutes to talk about it. But
it'll take all day.
He'll tell us the latest and greatest. All right, everybody. All right. Thanks for joining us
6:30. We'll see you next week at Netter Mike, and sign up for the Netter News.
California Free Radio, where we tell you what's going on behind the blue curtain to bring freedom back to the state of California. See you next week, guys.